So as you heard, my positioning on it not only from a criminal justice perspective. Let me tell you the other aspects of it. Because I've heard stories before I was commissioner, and I've heard stories all across the country about how medical marijuana is truly impacting and changing people's lives. And we have seen such a change in the type of research that's out there across the world. And I'm going to tell you a story that just adds to my story. So recount starts on Tuesday. Elections are supposed to be done on Tuesday. Recount starts on Wednesday, and we start going through this. My sister calls me on Thursday, and she says, I got to tell you something. Mom has been diagnosed with cancer, and she is having an emergency hysterectomy on Monday. I was already at capacity, and I couldn't really compute that at that moment, and that it was not a good prognosis from what I was being told at that moment. My mom had her surgery on Monday and started chemo a couple weeks later. A few weeks into her chemo, she calls me and says, Nick, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I said, what do you mean, Mom? And she's like, this is awful. After each treatment, I'm literally laying on the floor, not able to get up. I don't know if I've got the strength to keep doing this. And I said, Mom, you don't have an option here. You've got 2 daughters who are counting on you. You have an incredible granddaughter and grandson who want their grandmother around. And luckily, I knew enough about the program that I was able to get her onto the registry. And she was able to start taking CBD products in between these treatments and THC products immediately after. That gave her the physical strength to keep getting those chemo treatments. And because of that, she's still here with us today. And I hear stories like that every day. Every day. And so the program it is not the weed you may or may not have been smoking growing up.
No, I did. None of this I didn't inhale.
But what is remarkable about the program? There's good and bad, and I can go through all the policy issues that are bad with the program. That we only have 22 license holders, that everything is vertically integrated, which means that it's very expensive to keep the doors open, and that these companies have to be able to cultivate and manufacture and process and research and deliver. And you're asking one company, name another type of company out there that think about clothing. Somebody makes the cotton, somebody has the mills, eventually ship it to a manufacturer, the manufacturer then sells it to another company, and then you eventually sell it at a store. There's nothing else in society where you got one head. Everything gets done in one direction. And that's obviously also creates not a lot of competition, so the products are still very expensive in the grand scheme of things. But what this program is doing is allowing people to have alternatives to pharmaceutical drugs. Get them off of things like opioids. Get them off of other mood-altering prescription drugs. And giving them something that is more natural to alleviate some of the pain. And what's great about the program too is that there's all these different types of products that are out there. So if you don't feel comfortable, if you didn't smoke, and you don't feel comfortable with flour, that's fine. There are tinctures, which is basically an oil that you can either put right in your mouth, or you can put it into cooking, and you can actually make products in like cookies or brownies or soup even, or whatever you want to put it in. There are topicals that you can put onto your skin that kind of absorbs into the body. There are pills. Basically, there is a different type of product, a delivery mechanism for your comfort level. And what it gives is patients an opportunity to experiment for themselves and what they feel comfortable with. Now we have edibles. So if you're okay, I would always recommend that if, in fact, you're doing an edible, to make sure you know that it takes 45 minutes to kick in. A lot of people, they take an edible and think it's going to instantaneously work, and they keep taking edibles, and at the end of the day, they're just sleeping. So is to know that it takes longer period of time to kick in. It's a different feeling. It's a different euphoric. But those and there's different ranges of the percentages of the THC in the products. So the higher percentages are always recommended for, like, my mom. I wanted to give her whatever she needed and get her the highest dosaging and percentage of the THC products because I needed her that type of relief. Other patients, my grandmother had a boyfriend who had Parkinson's. And so we knew that if he had a Parkinson's and he started his tremors, he could just take 1 or 2 just hits off of a vape pen and it automatically calmed the tremors. So there's an incredible amount of opportunities. You have a lot of patients that are, a lot of our vets that have come back and have PTSD and are, been given, you should be taking this type of medicine and this type of medicine, and at the end of the day, we are, vets unfortunately have a very high suicide rate and are going through, extreme conditions mentally. And THC products gives them some of that relief. So they're not doing alcohol or harder drugs or any of these medications that may be completely altering their mind during the day and not functioning. So there's a lot of really great benefits from some of these products. Certainly there's a lot of people with a lot of information out here to talk to, getting information. I know here in Sumter there's definitely a handful of dispensaries around. So if you ever have any questions, just go inside. Everybody is well trained, is well versed in all the different types of products that they may have to offer. And certainly it is something that we have about 12 conditions that are in our Constitution. So it was passed back in 2016, back to put into our actual Constitution. And so there are 11 conditions, everything from Lou Gehrig's to Parkinson's to cancer to terminal to HIV/AIDS. And I'm going to forget all the rest of them. And so anybody who has a condition that's similar to any of those that are actually laid out in the Constitution can qualify. And there are doctors that are specializing in medical marijuana. It's unfortunate the way the statutes have actually been written that a lot of our specialized doctors, our oncologists, are not participating in the program because it's still federally illegal. And so a lot of the doctors are worried that if they give a recommendation, because it's only can be called a recommendation, they can't prescribe, so it's a recommendation. And so the way a recommendation should work in other states, you go see your doctor, they say, I recommend this for you, and check the box, and that should be that. But here in Florida, they were trying to prevent pot docs, but in fact they did just the opposite because they made it so prescriptive in nature that the doctor has to not only recommend it, but also give out the dosing, the frequency, and the delivery mechanism. And so that is part of what they have to tell these dispensaries of what the dosing of what you can go in and get. So a lot of your doctors think of that as a prescription. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, more likely than not, it's a duck. And that's what this is. And so a lot of our specialized doctors are not participating in the program. But if you went online as the Office of Medical Marijuana Use, OMU.gov, you can get a list of local doctor providers here locally, find where your dispensaries are. There's a lot of good information out there. But I would be happy to answer any question on that issue and to change the stereotype of it because this is medicine. This truly is medicine. And the reason why it was outlawed was because of lobbyists. It was outlawed because of the competition in the timber industry, and it was outlawed because of hemp more than it is anything else. So it's for 2 reasons. So one is outlawed because the cousin of it is the hemp plant. So I try to explain this to you, and then I'm going to get off my soapbox and get more questions. So anybody in here, whiskey, scotch drinkers, and bourbon? All right, a few of us. So basically the way I like to describe it is you've got kind of, whiskey up here is kind of the umbrella. And then you've got bourbon and scotch underneath it. Depending on how it's barreled, where it's barreled, and what ingredients you put into it is whether or not it becomes bourbon or scotch. Same thing with kind of the cannabis plants. You kind of have cannabis up here, and you kind of have hemp and marijuana. So one is non-euphoric, and one is euphoric. But the lobbyist industry saw that the hemp plant, which you heard me talk about, is a replacement for cotton's replacement for a lot of other materials. And so the big lobbying groups wanted to ban hemp because of the competition of those industries. The other thing is, to be quite honest, they were going after the black and brown communities, and that's why they made it illegal on the cannabis, on the marijuana side, to put more black and brown in jail on this issue. That's where we are. It's not because people were dying. It's not because it was, this huge outcry. It was for other reasons that had nothing to do really with the plant. And so we have been working since this to reverse that, and we are making progress in our states. We unfortunately fortunately made huge progress in 2018 through the Farm Bill legalizing hemp in the country, but we still have a lot of work to do on the federal level when it comes to marijuana.